A very good evening and welcome to this edition of The Fourth Estate. Charles Mongu Shampagi. Next week, on Wednesday, the Inspector General of Police, Kale Kaihura, is expected to appear before court to defend himself against accusations of torture of the force he commands. General Kaihura was sued with other senior officers of the Uganda Police, but in his private capacity as the inspector, not as the office of the Inspector General of Police. Of course, we also understand that he missed a parliamentary hearing just last week. He sent representation. Parliament is also investigating allegations of torture or brutality by the police. The police for 8 years now has been appearing as the top human rights abuser in the reports of the Uganda Human Rights Commission. What kind of policing is this? Is what we'll be interrogating over the next 1 hour. Let me introduce, with me in studio, my colleague, Onapito Ekomoloit, Corporate Affairs Director, Nile Breweries, S.A.B. Miller. Ona, always a pleasure to be with you here.
Good evening, Charles.
We have from the Uganda Police Force, Assistant Inspector General of Police, Erasmus Twaruhuka, who is Director, Human Rights and Legal Services. Most welcome, sir.
Thank you, Charles.
Angelo Izama making a return after a very long absence.
Thank you, Charles.
You look a little bit grayer in your beard than the last time you were here.
Yeah, these are the centrifugal forces at play.
And from the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, Samuel Herbert Nsubuga, Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, viewers.
We know that we've been watching the story of the Uganda police, starting from using of tear gas to live ammunition, to use of colored water spray. Is it? I don't know what you call it, the technical language that it is used. But let me start with Herbert. Herbert, you are the Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims.
Yes.
What is your take on the recent story about the police and its dealing with political opposition, especially supporters of Dr. Kizza Besigye?
Okay, let me start by saying that as our organization, African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, has been with the police over the years, especially when it came to having the enactment of the anti-torture law put in place. We worked together. There were stakeholders in putting together this bill then into law, and we have also been creating awareness on issues to do with prevention against torture, and so it's something which I believe the police are aware about the issues of torture and how it's a vice.
Are you suggesting, Mr. Nsubuga, that what police has been engaged in is not policing, but torture?
Okay, now that is something which maybe my colleague will
No. You deal with these victims, yes. And you say they are aware about this. I know that the trial of the court petition against Kaihura and the other senior officers is premised on the Anti-Torture Act.
Yes. That
you worked on.
Yes.
You say with the police.
Yes.
So the police has gone beyond its mandate and it's engaging in torture. When I last dealt with ACTV, you're dealing with torture in safe houses, in torture chambers, in places of detention. But now what we're dealing with appears, from what you're saying, torture on the streets.
Okay, now the law itself actually deals with, now what happens is that even individuals are accountable for their actions.
So the IGP is supposed to be held individually accountable?
All these people, as they have been privately prosecuted, are being put to task as in their individual capacity, and so that is something which we included into the Anti-Torture Act, which was not there before.
Okay.
Where it was basically public officials, the Attorney General would answer.
Okay, Angelo, this attempt at holding Kale Kaihura individually accountable for the actions of the force he commands. He's expected in court next week. Nothing much has been presented before court because the case hasn't started. So we can't be in breach of the sub judice rule because there's nothing that has gone on the court record yet apart from the petition itself. Is this something that you think the Anti-Torture Act can achieve?
Well, I've been advised by lawyers that that case really has no merits. I think the primary thing to take out of it is if Kaihura appears in the dock. I think the image of the chief of police, you know, before a judge is what people who have brought this case hope to achieve ultimately. But to prosecute him personally for under the present law, I don't think it's going to fly. That's what I've been told by lawyers who have taken a look at this.
Yes, I've listened to some discussions. I've been privy to some discussions that say, well, if you have the IGP, especially the person of Kale Kaihura, in the dock, then you make a major statement. And the struggle, you see, there was a petition filed by some young lawyer, Rutaro, who wants to block the trial itself. I think he didn't succeed at the first step. He hasn't had a hearing at the first step, and he's been applying for an injunction. I don't know how far that will go.
So here's my thinking. I don't know what Ona and the lawyer from the police have to say about this, but every time you see like a protracted situation where the police is on a collision course with civilians and it's not going away, just like repeating in various iterations, you have to ask what are the root causes. And this case will not address the root causes. I think it just adds to the narrative that in fact the police, Uganda's police force and Uganda's at least civilian politicians are on a collision course, the causes of which are not being addressed by that very struggle itself. But I think by and large, you know, as Ugandans are to blame because we don't like to treat the actual drivers of conflict. Now even I and the President IGP have had a conversation one-on-one in 2010 before the 2011 election. And I remember telling him, look, you know, it appears as if you're going to clash with what you might term as general political opposition. But the conditions here in the city are such that there are drivers of this clash that are nothing to do with police. For example, the fragility within the city here, the lack of jobs, the overcrowding, this has nothing to do with the police. And whether or not
has this anything to do with the politics? If it doesn't have anything to do with the police, does it have something to do with the politics?
It does, precisely. Now, if you supply enough jobs, that problem would go away. It's not a policing problem. But I think the police itself is trapped in by putting itself in the position that Kaihura has. It has just exacerbated the situation. But I thought that this case and the conditions that it has created just is the added symbolism of our collective failure to deal with root causes. We're in a country, Charles, where we had a war in the north, 20 years. Millions of people in the IDPs. A guy called Joseph Kony, and in fact, worse men than him, killing, raping, pillaging like no one's business. There was a time when, not long ago, you couldn't go through one part of Uganda. The east and north were just battlegrounds. Do you hear that narrative these days? These very same Ugandans who these guys are singing that the human rights is primary in the way they want to prosecute their affairs. Do you hear these guys talk about the war that was there recently? It's like people have forgotten, right?
Yeah, people have moved on.
Can you imagine that? That if you don't have a collective memory of something as brutal as the war in the north, do these guys have the right today to claim that these opposition and police clashes, which, by the way, by comparison, are just a drop in the ocean of the suffering that went on in the north. These guys who are making these claims, do they really have a right? If you're not the kind...
Don't they have a right? Maybe that would be the question that would put to Erasmus to answer for us. The way you have applied your policing, Angelo says you're treating the surface, not the root cause of the problem. And someone is saying you're applying criminal intent. The reason you have this, this petition before court is that under the regime of Kale Kaihura, you have attempted to apply criminal intent to political disagreement. And that's why that Kaihura appears in the dock is an important matter for those trying to prosecute him.
I don't think so. I think I agree with Angelo from the explanation he has given. You see, police, we are responsible for order, public order. So irrespective of the cause for the disorder, we have to come in. Whether the disorder is because there are no jobs, whether there are people agitating, for whatever reason, as long as there is disorder, public disorder, you don't expect any other arm of government to come in other than the police to restore order. So that's why we come in. We don't wait to say, what is the cause of the public disorder? No. We have to come in immediately and restore order.
Is that according to your rule books or according to your practice? Because there seems to be a wide gulf between what is on the rule book and what the practice is.
No, I think it's both, because the Constitution gives us the mandate.
Are you surprised, Mr. Twaruka, that over the last 2 weeks, you'd say, that you have let Besigye walk with his supporters? There hasn't been disorder, and when you have tried to apply order, you have actually created more disorder.
You know, Besigye is allowed to walk if there's no threat, if he cooperates with the police. Because usually, the issue is, we need to sit together, agree on the routes. If you want to move from point A to point B with a crowd of people surrounding him, it's necessary to avoid the central business district, where it's likely to cause disrupt normal business.
I think it's deeper than that, because we've seen Besigye go to Kabale and police has tried to block him, and then there's been chaos. He's gone to Mbarara. When police has tried to block him, there's been chaos. He's moved in Kampala. When the police has tried to block him, there's been chaos. When the police hasn't disrupted him, including yesterday in Mbarara, there was no chaos. Including the other day in Kampala, there was no chaos. So how do you reconcile the two situations when the police has tried to apply order and instead there has been disorder, and when you have not attempted to apply order, there's actually been order?
I think just it's the other way around. There's disorder, there's chaos, or chaos is about to happen and the police comes in. And for your information, yesterday in Mbarara, the police sat together with the organizers for Dr. Besigye. They agreed on everything, and each party kept its part of the bargain. That's why there was order.
Is that because you have 9 of your own officers and men facing trial before the police internal disciplinary mechanism, and you have a petition that takes your Inspector General and 7 other senior officers before a court, a civil court?
No, I don't think so.
What do you think?
The issue here, Charles, is about the officers who have appeared before the police disciplinary court. They didn't have to appear because of what they did. It was very clear. It was in the cameras.
Surprise, surprise, because that's been happening like for the last 10 years. What they did the other day has been happening for the last about 10 years. And this is the first lot of people you're taking before the police disciplinary
I think
committee.
just it was different. Let's be sincere. It was different because from the captions, it was very clear that you could see officers, you know, beating people who were on the streets, not part of the entourage of Besigye. You are not part of them. You could see the border borders were seated. And these police officers exceeded their mandate. And because they exceeded their mandate, that's why they had to appear before the disciplinary court.
Most people will not see the exceeding the mandate. They'll actually see a change of heart since that beating that caused a lot of outrage.
I wouldn't think so.
It's a question of trying to reconcile the two. I don't know. Let me ask Ona to come into this discussion. Is it maintaining law and order? Is it abusing human rights?
Look, Charles, I think for me, this whole latest episode, or the pending, if it happens, appearance of the IGP in court, really brings the wider debate about the Uganda police. To me, the Uganda police is double-faced, or it has two faces. There is really a beautiful face of the Uganda police, which is getting swept through into the mud because of the ugly face. I mean, this is the police which we all come to this studio close to midnight. You can drive home without really worrying that somebody's going to flag you down and give me the keys. This country is basically trading 24/7. People are traveling up and down. I mean, this is one of the safest cities among other places in the country. And that is really because we have a very visible police. In fact, until lately, this overt police presence seemed a Ugandan kind of character, but now it's becoming the world phenomenon. I mean, in big cities in the Western world are now realizing that you need to police because of terrorism, because of other people are being stabbed left and right. But now it's this ugly face which unfortunately we all see, and it's good that the police lawyer is here. And there is really no other way of explaining. When your face is ugly, it's ugly. You know, you can't change it. You know, they need some kind of plastic surgery to kind of camouflage that face. And unfortunately, the beautiful side of the face is being masked by the excesses. And yet at the same time, I think for General Kaihura and his team, they are both victims and perpetrators of the situation. They are victims of a political culture which believes in strong arm tactics, which is basically been a character of Uganda's politics since independence. There is hardly any leader who has controlled this country without being known to apply a bit of armed force and persuasion, cajoling. So until when the politics really frees the police from being used, there's no way that ugly face of the police is going to disappear. They will be saying they are keeping law and order, but really it's a political game which they are being forced to play.
Let me come to Erasmus briefly. Is that a fair description of the Uganda police? As a police that has an ugly face and a beautiful face, but the beautiful face is hidden or is overshadowed by the ugly the ugly engagements that you and your colleagues engage in, and that the other side is you're actually prisoners of the politics.
I think, Charles, the issue here is the ugly face, what is known as the ugly face of the police, is really a small, very small fraction of what the police is. The beautiful face of the police is there. It's people who have dealt with the police. They know this beautiful face. It's there. It's only that the recent few weeks, there are these incidents that have happened that tend to tarnish the image of the police. But otherwise, everybody who has dealt with police know the good side of the police. It's there. It's evident.
Okay, we'll take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we should be able to pick up this discussion. And I'll be asking one question. Will you deliver the IGP before the judge, as required? After a short break. You're still watching The Fourth Estate, and welcome to this edition. And we're asking the question, policing politics, abusing human rights or maintaining law and order? Or versus maintenance of law and order. We have with us in studio Mr. Erasmus Toruhuka, who is Director, Human Rights and Legal Services within the Uganda Police Force, is Assistant Inspector General of Police. We have also Samuel Herbert Nsubuga, Chief Executive Officer at the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, my colleague Angelo, and Ona Peter Ekomoloid. Angelo, let me come back to you. You've listened to Erasmus try to make the case for the police. So there's a very beautiful, people have dealt with the police, and everybody agrees with him. You work, there are many thousands of decent policemen and women working very hard to protect everybody.
And working very hard under some fairly deplorable
difficult conditions. But the image of the police that the public knows and the world knows is the image of a brutal force that if they can't bring out enough tear gas, enough pepper spray, they no longer use buttons now, the nice black short buttons. They use sticks, and people have been talking about a police that whacks people like they're herding cattle. And we're having a discussion in this studio, and I said, ask any serious cattle keeper today, if you beat their cow the way the police was beating those border men, they'll beat you and they'll fire you if he has man.
But why bring cattle keepers into this this conversation?
No, because I think cattle keepers, well, cattle owners, not cattle keepers, maybe. Cattle owners take good care of their cows better than.
I don't know. I think that the analogy there is mischievous because maybe we are ruled by cattle keepers, but no. Let's put it like this: the reason I disagree with the council here, and accept his agreeing with my initial analysis, is that look, one of the easiest defenses that governments, institutions, and wayward individuals make is to say, no, look, what you're dealing with are isolated cases, a few bad apples, the battle is okay. That don't condemn the institution, condemn the individual. There are very many versions of this excuse, which have served rogue governments and rogue institutions for decades and forever. The reality is that you're dealing with a systemic problem, and what someone referred to here as the police's actions arising out of the national political culture. It's not enough to say that, look, these are just isolated cases, because the conditions guarantee that this situation repeats itself over time. And because it is systemic, we can get to the roots of it. In fact, there's a good definition of evil that was applied to what was happening with the US servicemen in Iraq. Because people wondered, you go there to liberate a country, you've got all these 17 to 18-year-olds, 25-year-olds who enlist because they want to go and serve their country proudly. And then you've got all these pictures of, the unimaginable abuse being done by kids who the other day were just, normal high school kids who joined the army, wanted to do good. How did these kids become evil all of a sudden? It's not because they were evil to start with, but they were subjected to conditions that made them the way they were.
Well, if you'd read William Golding, a lot of the flies, he'd disagree with you. He'd say evil is inborn.
No, but
yes.
So here's the construction which related to the Uganda police force. There are very many people who go to this force. One, they need a job. They come with their families. Their country has given them a chance to survive. They are trained in methods that are essentially to serve the public good. Why is it that you see these men, like crazy people, meting out punishment that they wouldn't themselves stand in their own homes? It's because they have been driven to that situation by the conditions they have been subjected to, which is why I think I never blame individual police people. I think that A, you're dealing with superior orders, which is basically what another definition of evil is blind obedience to order. And secondly, under this current IGP, and let's be honest about it, there has been an instinct in the police that if you're seen doing basically political work, you are rewarded. People who are, and you can count the number of changes in the police, the sheer turnover, this rapid transition of officers is, I think if you speak to officers, they tell you the impression they get is that if you're given an opportunity to appear before the cameras brutalizing civilians or brutalizing the political opposition, that is your ladder up the chain.
I was actually surprised that at the assembly of officers who went to the parliamentary committee, he picked on some very old and very senior officers, in Okoth Ochola, in Edward Ochom, in the head of CIAD, Grace Akulo, and Kawesi. But the turn around the face of the police on the streets that we meet, you no longer meet Okoth Ochola, you no longer meet Edward Ochom. You can't even tell what office he holds at the moment. But let me come back to you, Mr. Nsovuga. What is your definition of torture?
torture is intentionally inflicting excruciating pain, both physical and psychological. And the key word here is intentional. And for a purpose, usually to extract a confession, and in this case, now like this act does not also deal with also torture, it also deals with cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment. So the issue of torture, in fact, the definition at times it can be a bit complex. Some people can confuse it with domestic violence and child abuse, but the issue of that it's torture is done for a purpose, and when you do something if you torture for intention to kill somebody, then that's not really torture is not intended to kill. It's intended to punish, to put excruciating
Would
pain
that apply to what we have seen between the police and the political opposition, especially supporters of Kizza Besigye?
Yes, when it comes to that's what they call unsystematic beating, where beating is you beat somebody all over the body. That is part of we can say that is into the area of cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment.
But where do you draw the line between a police trying to do a difficult job with a very stubborn political opposition? Because when the IGP addressed the press after those ugly scenes, he said, we've stopped use of tear gas because tear gas affects other people who are not part of the demonstration of the riot. We've stopped use of live bullets, which has been used at some stage, and rubber bullets, because they affect other people. We've stopped use of pepper spray because it affects those who are not involved. So where do you draw the line? How do you manage? If you're in the position of the police, how would you deal with a highly flammable situation like we've been seeing on the streets of Kampala and elsewhere?
I think the issue of training now is extremely critical. Training the police in managing some of these situations.
So you think this is a result of poor training?
I think there should be some sort of skilled training in managing the situations like this, which should be emphasized, so that these situations do not happen, and maybe even depending on what instructions were given to these officers, maybe they were over. In this case, they were overzealous. Okay.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the worth in taking Kaihura before putting Kaihura in the dock?
At the end of the
how
day,
much? Yes.
Because what has been happening is that the public there has been these incidences, but they are not convinced that the officers have been reprimanded. The issue of the professional standards unit, people are still not convinced that the punishments are commensurate to the actions. Okay. So this issue of the officers going to court to answer for these charges, criminal charges, I think would go a long way in trying to bring out the image that at least there is a punishment which can...
Oh, there's holding them to account.
Holding them to account, yes.
Ona, you talked about an entrapped police in the politics. And during the break, we're talking about the rise of IGP Kaihura and the phenomenon that's Kizza Besigye. IGP Kaihura gets appointed on 13th November 2005. Kizza Besigye is arrested on 14th November 2005, the same day the National Resistance Movement nominates President Yoweri Museveni to run as the NRM flag bearer for the first multi-party elections in this country. Of course, Kizza Besigye had run in 2001, run to exile and then come back. He'd come back on 26th of October 2005. And you've seen Kale Kaihura's leadership of the police tied together as conjoined twins with Kizza Besigye's political struggles over those years. Is that what you mean when you talk about get trapped by the politics.
Yeah, and I think I was talking with the Assistant Inspector General here earlier that if it were left to me, I would actually either split what is currently Uganda Police into two separate units or create a total different force to do what the current police is doing. Because there should be that police which we expect to solve problems within individuals, over property, over what, which is the police that most societies would want. But then there is also a reality that President Museveni, like many leaders, knows that the state is under threat from people who want to overthrow it. And then to bring the police to solve that crisis is not what the police should be doing. There should be a separate force. You can call it state protection force or whatever you want to call it. But let everyone know that it's a purely, really almost trying to solve political disputes where the elections are not conclusive. Then you bring a force to make sure the winner is in office. But then the police is not that force, you know. The police the way we know it. But now when it's an effort to mix the two, investigating fraud, investigating crime, solving land disputes, and then also solving what is basically political disputes, it becomes very complicated for the police. So that's why the ugly face gets to overshadow the good face.
The beautiful face.
Yeah.
The question I promised I would ask you when we come back out of the break. Will the IGP, Kale Kaihura, appear in court on Wednesday?
I think what I can say is that Wednesday is not very far. It's 2 days away from today. Let's wait and see.
I thought lawyers are asked to give straight answers.
It's straight.
No, it's not.
It's a straight answer.
Will the IGP appear or not?
If you are asking me if I will appear, I would know what to answer.
You and the legal, you head the legal team.
I do.
Yes. And from what we know, the IGP has not engaged private lawyers. The legal team of the police is most likely going to represent him because you say there is no division between the IGP, the individual, and the head of the institution called the Uganda Police Force.
You know, what I know is that, by the way, up to now, he has not been summoned.
He hasn't?
He hasn't.
That's news, isn't it?
He hasn't. We've been waiting for the criminal summons. Up to now, we've not received them, either in the registry or by his secretary or to me or at his home. He hasn't received service.
So he's not aware that there is a court case against him? Is that what you're suggesting?
There are rumors that there's a case. If you're not served, how do you appear when you've not been served? But there's talk that he's supposed to appear. Yes.
So you also picked your rumors from the newspapers, from the street, from bars? Where
from the newspapers, social media, that's what they are saying. And we've been waiting for these criminal summons to come and we see what to do. So our hands are like tied. We don't have summons. We don't know what to respond to.
If you received the summons from the rumors that you have seen,
yes,
would you deliver the IGP before a judge?
You know, that's not my mandate, but I can tell you what to do. We'd sit together and decide what to do.
Sit together with who?
With the IGP.
And you haven't had a discussion about these rumors?
He told me to wait until I'm served or until the registry is served. And when we get the criminal summons, I take them to him, which I haven't done.
You said earlier that Wednesday is only 2 days from now.
Yes.
And you said, let's wait and see.
Yeah.
And now you're telling us a completely different story that says you haven't received any summons, so Wednesday shouldn't be in your timetable, in your scheme of planning.
Yeah, maybe between now and Wednesday, we may receive them.
Let's take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back this last segment of the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing policing politics. The IGP finds himself in a spot of bother because he faces a criminal summons raised against him as an individual and is expected in court on Wednesday. Someone sends a message here and says the summons were published in the papers on Thursday or Friday. I don't know if it is the rumors that were published, but the summons were published. And Inteja Simwe says the IGP has, this is what he says, Kaihura has made it impossible for Besigye to make Ugandan governable as promised. All these reports are aimed at demonizing him to have him removed. Is that correct?
I don't think so.
What do you think?
Let me talk about the issue of criminal summons being published in the newspapers. I think I'm going to look for those newspapers for Thursday and Friday and see if the criminal summons are there, because that is also alternative service. I won't understand why they should do that. Why don't they bring them to us? But if that is the form they have chosen, well.
Maybe the person who was supposed to
Do you see
fears the police can be arrested for being idle
you
and disorderly.
You can't be arrested when you are just delivering criminal summons to the police.
The
Why?
police determine whether you're idle and disorderly.
By that law is no longer applied. It's no longer in our penal code of idle and disorderly.
That's good.
But do you feel as police, do you feel yourselves as victims of the politics of the day? Because if you look at what Ona talked about, the other work that the police does on a day-to-day basis, and the thing that gets you on the defensive all the time, which is your handling of the political situation in the country, or the politicians,
You
for
see,
that matter.
for us, really, Charles, we don't look at politics. We don't look at politics. We look at public disorder. Like I said, it doesn't matter whether the public disorder is a result of politics, is a result of the environment, is a result of any social disorder. As long as there is something that threatens public order, we come in as the police. We don't ask ourselves that what is the cause. Our role is to ensure that there is order. And so we come in under that, because it's our mandate to keep law and order everywhere.
Mr. Look, I want you to look straight in that camera and tell that to the people watching you. And maybe they can make the interpretation of whether you're telling them the truth.
And what I'm saying
Yes.
is that the mandate of the police is to keep law and order everywhere in the country. It doesn't matter what has caused the disorder, whether it is politics, whether it is social disorder, whatever it is. As long as there's public disorder, we come in to create order. It's as simple as
So
that.
you think people who criticize you talked about social media, you talk about the media, you talk about the other day the IGP was very angry at the media, at TVs, at newspapers for portraying, he said they were biased. They were looking just for him, trying to project him in a bad light. And all the condemnation here were from members of the general public. You think they're just dreaming that? They're just accusing you unfairly?
You know, Chess, you're a journalist. I remember some time back I talked to the journalist. He says that news, something that makes news, is something that is out of the ordinary. If 100 normal, ordinary things happen, they will not make it to the news. But if there's one incident that has happened that is out of the ordinary, it makes it to the news. So it's not surprising, therefore, that what you see making news about the police is those few incidents that are out of the ordinary.
You call them few incidents. The Uganda Human Rights Commission, a government agency responsible for the protection and promotion of human rights, in report after report after report, has police on top, and you still call that few isolated incidents.
I can explain what I mean
Yes.
by few. Compared to the good that the police does, those incidents are few. No one has recorded the good thing that police does. I wish there was also such study to record everything that is good about the police. And you see, the book would be as big as this. And the bad things the police have done, it will be so small.
I've been a fairly consistent reader of the police crime and traffic incidents report, annual police crime report.
Yes.
And I see the reporting. I remember one that stood out for me, I think was the report for 2009, where you found crime had actually grown by 300%. Reporting was high, but people didn't expect the police to solve their problem, so they just reported just for reporting's sake.
That was in 2009.
And things
This is
have changed
2016, yeah, they've changed.
Angela, I want to go back to the question of do you think the police finds itself as a victim, entrapped by the policies of the country?
Initially, I told you that as a country, we don't even honor recent tragedies, I spoke about the 20-year tragedy in the north and the east. You know, if you are conscious citizens, something as traumatic as what happened in the north doesn't feature in the national narrative, I wouldn't be so bothered with the crisis on our streets, because I think that you need a totally different citizenry to hold public officials to account. And that citizenry must care for things like what I've just mentioned. There's a report, I'm sure he's read it, that was the report on the Commission of Human Rights that was led by Justice Arthur Oda, which examined the history of violence of Uganda, 1962 to 1986. You should read it, because most people forget. Here in Naguru, there was that place called Public Safety Unit. There was nothing about public safety in Naguru. People would go there to die. They would knock your knees out, break your back, fold you like a bag of sacks. You know, there are testimonies that are there. You know, you'd think that elite Ugandans would bother to read that they live in a very violent country. So that said, what's happening in our streets is just a small modicum. But what I think pains me personally is that as a country, you know, we don't have the moral consciousness that takes into full account these incidents of violence and empowers our institutions to hold people accountable. So you have public officers like him who come and compare small periods of how the force is behaving, because they know that the Ugandan public is concerned about the here and now, the short term. They're not concerned about the institutional health. That's why excuses, you know, come and fly. That's why they personalize issues. General Kaihura is a public servant, but he's also just a holder of an office. Why is this whole issue about him as an individual, not the character of the force as a whole? And why
there's been an argument. I think I was having this discussion with a young journalist called Gaki. You're saying the trial of Kaihura is the trial of the Uganda police.
It is not.
Would that be fair?
It is not. It is we're a country. First of all, by the way, the real debate we should be having is about how corruption has hollowed out the moral compass of Ugandans. That they look at everything is about individuals and personal consumption and about personal safety.
Do you think that individual holders of offices, also deal with matters almost as individual matters? Because if you see what I just talked about, the relationship between Kaihura and Inspector General of Police Kaihura and opposition politician Kizza Besigye, it looks like it's a personal matter between
and the narrative carries on
yes,
even
Kaihura at one time has to say, I have no personal problem with Kizza Besigye, and Kizza Besigye has to say, you know, it's Kaihura the problem.
That's what I'm talking about. It's very much a national culture. And you can just step outside here, you'll see, you know, we lived in walled societies, we've talked about this. Ugandans, the culture we have now, which we teach our kids, is that you should be concerned about yourself and your family. The public good is not serviced, by the way, by institutions. That is why I feel that the debate we are having right now, that General Kaihura should appear, the whole head of the Uganda Police Force, for him to appear before a court, you know, is such a grand, it's such a big deal that even without an inquisition by, let's say, judge-led inquiry, you know, that may compel an officer as important like him to come and answer for the crimes of the force and for his own crimes personally. That level there hasn't been reached yet.
I thought institutions like or organizations like Insubugas are supposed to actually drive us to that. But we even organizations that are committed to protection of human rights, even the media, even the political actors, even other institutions, both state and non-state, tend to deal with situations fleetingly. It appears the police was working people, now it hasn't beaten anybody for the last 2 weeks, and everybody will move on, will forget
it's okay
what happened. It's okay. It comes back.
Kaihura and Besigye are sitting together somewhere in their home area, shaking hands over someone's wedding. Everything is fine.
Yes.
In this case, we actually, really, at the end of the day, we really want, first of all, when we go back to this, at the end of the day, if the summons are respected on Wednesday, we would feel that now the law is working. But before that, even the law has been, we have tried to create awareness, not only the security agencies, but even the public, about torture being a non-derogable right, where at no instance at all should torture be whatever. So it's not really a one-off thing. This has been a protracted struggle from the early 2000s of having torture becoming something which we try to rid of in this country.
Okay.
Charles, for me, really, when it's things which are motivated by politics, while I'm a believer in the law, I don't think that's where the solution lies. I think it lies it's almost a moral issue, in the convictions of the individuals. Because even if you take one individual to court, and there are many others who share their mindset, they will do these things. So you need really the political actors to get saved, so to say, on both sides, of the divide.
I thought the choice of IGP and the senior officers was primarily to send a signal, send a message that it doesn't matter how high you are.
Yeah, but
you can
I'm
be held
saying,
individual accountable.
I'm saying there are even smaller people under them who still hold the same mentality that you can use force to solve political scores, economic scores, and what have you. So until when you have people with the power not having that mindset, you're not going to solve these problems through a court.
Gentlemen, let's just pick a couple of callers, because I know there are many who have been trying to get through to us. Can I have a few callers before we end this discussion? Let me just have one or two callers, and then we'll end this discussion. Do you have any caller? How does this situation get resolved, Angelo?
Well, I think what we're dealing with is a long period of political transition, but like I said, as a country we should stop dealing with this national amnesia. We're a very violent country, a country of Idi Amin, Joseph Kony, the civil wars. And
okay, sorry, I'm going to cut you because I need to pick those callers before we end. We have very little time left. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, your name and where you're calling from? Keep your question or comment brief.
Okay, good evening, Mr.
Good evening, sir.
Oh, I'm called Richard Kimaro.
Yes, Richard?
First of all, how much we know that police in Africa are kind of, okay, they are not that's it. But here in Uganda, it's really overwhelming. The police here, the Kaigura police, how exposed the partisan side of it. I mean, myself, I was a communication coordinator at NRS Secretariat for at least 3 years. But I could give orders to BPCs, to boxes of different stations. You see? Police.
Are you a policeman?
No.
Excuse me?
Are you a policeman?
No, I'm not.
So you gave the orders in which capacity?
Now, for example, like the likes of Kitata, if that is one of those border 2010, he gives to policemen, to 20 policemen, to commander. Look at this good, some of these good who have been globally people around. They move DPCs, giving orders, beating people, and the DPCs and OCs, the commanders are simply looking on. So, the Uganda police right now, I think it's not the Uganda police we had in the days ever since Kaigura stepped in. From experience, I've been at the NRS secretary, I'm telling you, police is working under strict scrutiny, but they are on intense pressure, not from the side of their training, but from the side of a political scene. Okay.
Richard, I'm afraid I'm going to cut you there because I need to pick another caller, and then we wind up this discussion. Let me pick one more caller. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir. Tell us your name and where you're calling from. Keep your question or comment brief.
Yes, my name is Simon,
Yes, Simon.
and thank you, sir, for that wonderful program. I'm calling from Kampala, and my immediate response is about Lapito.
Yes.
Lapito is very wrong to think that that when the state thinks it is threatened, it is right to respond in a way to respond.
Mm.
In this case, police is part of the state institution. It should not be acting in politics. Instead, it should say, if government feels threatened, and if government is threatened, there's no problem, because especially this is coming legitimately from the opposition, if it's threatened, police has no to intervene, except if the population is breaking the law. Then my second comment is directed to this gentleman from the police.
Yes, Mr. Tarhuka.
Yes, he says that these are few isolated issues. He fails to know that the recent election was delivered by the police. The police were caught stuffing the ballot boxes,
Where?
harassing the opposition. Yes,
Where were they?
we shall come to that record. We can follow here, yes.
Mm.
So that's not out minor thing. That is undermining the fundamental right of citizens of the country to change the government legally.
Okay.
Yes?
Thank you very much. I need to pick one more call and then we will come back to studio and wind up. Hello? 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 Can you speak to us? There are many people trying to get through the line, so can you kindly get through? Yes, please.
Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Your name and where you're calling from?
Yes, police, the IGP has been arrested because he saw in the media last week that he was arrested in Rwanda.
Okay, what's your name, sir? What's your name?
I'm called Abdallah from Piandongo.
Abdallah from Kriandongo. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, he will answer you. Okay, we got to bring this back. I know there are many people trying to get through the lines, but unfortunately we can't take all of you. Mr. Torhuka, let me come back to you.
Okay.
Start with Abdallah from Kriandongo.
Did I hear him right?
He said he wants to ask you to confirm from you whether the IGP was arrested because he had, I don't know from where, that the IGP had been arrested in Rwanda or somewhere.
In Rwanda?
Mm.
I'm not aware.
You're not aware?
I've not had any information about his arrest.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Is the IGP safe?
He's very safe.
Okay. How do you respond to Simon and Richard? Simon says these are not small isolated incidents as you try to claim, and that you actually delivered this election, the last election of February.
He mentioned something that is very grave. He said that some police officers were caught stuffing ballot papers.
Mm-hmm.
That is very grave, certainly. That's something we cannot gloss over. That is wrong. I don't think it happened. I'm just hearing it for the first time. I don't know whether it was reported anywhere, whether there's any investigation going on. But if it happened, we have to condemn it. It is wrong, and it must be investigated, and those officers brought to book. Then the other issue of that the incidents are isolated. You know, I need to bring this in context. What I called few cases is the few incidents where the police name is tarnished. There are few. I still insist there are few compared to the good things the police has done. It is only in that context. Only in that context.
In the political context.
In the context of...
And if you tie that with what
like
Richard
the
said,
weatherman,
that
they
you're
talk of
hiding...
isolated showers, but it's still a shower. Isolated
like
showers.
Richard said, that you're a highly partisan police. They say police is partisan on the African continent, but Uganda's is overwhelming. That's his word.
But this
I
is
don't know what he means.
an unfair reading of the Ugandan situation. The Electoral Commission, ahead of this election, gave me a list of elected officers. Remember, I put the number out there. They elected, the number of people who would have been elected to office in this cycle was slightly over 1.7 million. The national resistance movement is so dominant in the political system that even a reference to the police force being a partisan force is just, it pales. You see what I'm saying? Eh? The NRM is so dominant in all the sectors of the state that there is no question of what is partisan and what is not. In any case, say someone like me who really comes from the northern part of the country. When you think about the politics of a monoculture, the old parties of Uganda, the so-called independence parties, have completely died. In this last election, they were completely finished, right? NRM has replaced on both ends of the opposition and the main establishment. It's all one stock of politicians, including Dr. Besigye, who comes previously from the NRM. So when I hear people talk about a partisan police, I think that their construction of what ought to be the separation is at least 10 years.
If the
10
lines
years
have been
late.
so blurred that you can't put apart when police is doing policing work or political work, you can't put it apart. Or you apply the same to maybe the Electoral Commission or another government institution, then I think we need a completely different discussion. We're having a chat.
I'm just saying that is just the reality.
We're having a chat with Onai, and I want to end with him. Earlier today, he was of the view that we should have spent a little bit more time, maybe next Sunday, discussing this petition that was handed over to President Museveni in his capacity as chairman of the NRM in Chankwanzi at the beginning of the week, this last week, where they asked him to embrace amendment of the constitution to remove the age limit, and asking him personally to offer himself to stand again by those guys in Chankwanzi.
That's why I'm saying the system is so dominant that we cannot talk about traditional checks and balances, and it is a legal fiction now to talk about a partisan force in this kind of environment.
Ona, Simon says you are very wrong to say that when the state feels threatened, it has to respond in a particular way.
Well, I totally agree with Simon that the police should not necessarily be arbitrating political disputes, but of course, in an ideal world, you may say the state should not be threatened, but in a real world, it should be. I mean, in fact, one of the problems of Uganda's political history is that at point X, the state failed to defend itself. Okay. And we are paying some of the price for that. So I'm only for the state defending itself, but I'm saying it should get another force.
Just one word from each one of you as we get out of here. How do you see this getting resolved? Because some people have been thinking like, oh, Besigye has finally fixed the police. Because for a long time people were thinking police has fixed Besigye. This political contestation between the police and the political opposition.
Well, personally, I believe President Museveni's greatest strength is that he knows when to pull back. And I think what we are seeing now is, after sort of really putting Besigye in his place after the election, is now pulling back, and we may then see Besigye settle back to the pre-election self, which was an ordinary citizen.
Erasmus, how do you see this playing out to the end? You're trying your own officers. There are criminal summons against the IGP and another group of officers, and you talked about it. A change of heart or change of tactic, I don't know. How does this get resolved?
I think the courts of law are going to resolve this. On our part as the police, we certainly don't condone what we've seen. And that's why IGP made it very clear and instructed PSU to investigate, and the officers who perpetrated this have appeared before the disciplinary court.
Thank you. Angelo, how does it get resolved?
Well, you need a large, wide-scale root and branch reorganization of Uganda's security forces. Certainly, I think I buy Ona's idea of having a, ordinary law and order being, the responsibility of a different branch of the police. It's this kinds of innovation that would help. Of course, the political leadership we have to go beyond this transition here before some of these things are ultimately resolved, because they are like deep political problems, which, as I've said before, shouldn't capture the police the way it has done.
Thank you, Mr. Nsubuga. How does it get resolved?
I think now everyone will be conscious of their actions, because at least even though the example of summons being given individually to officers, I think we will send a message that you have to be careful the way you operate in the future.
Thank you. We need to get out of here. Just want to mention one thing. There's a gentleman who's a friend of mine. He buried his father last Sunday and his wife this Sunday. You must have met. Yes, he's one of those guys who's been for a very long time investing in Uganda's tourism industry. A gentleman called Richard Toro. So condolences to the family. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Erasmus, for making time for the show. Thank you very much, Honor, for making time for the show. Thank you, Angelo. Always a pleasure to have you back. And thank you very much, Mr. Nsugulu. Thank you very much to you all our viewers for joining us tonight and always. And thank you very much to the production team that keeps up late to deliver the show to you. From me, it's a good night.